Okay. Ready? Thank you for downloading this episode of Scuffed. We're going to do a bunch of patron questions later in the show, but there's been a lot of good news lately, so let's churn through some of it right away. Top story of the past 10 days for you, Velasquez. Go.
Oh, well, I've actually been offline for the past few days, but I've heard that McKennie finally made his move. Where'd he land, Everton or Southampton?
'Twas Juventus.
Just kind of a complete mind-blowing development. So I'm going to go ahead and say Weston McKennie, any American to Juventus, is going to be the biggest story of the past 10 days / year. I know Nick Tadegway dressed and played in a friendly for Schalke, but I think I'm going to give the edge to McKennie signing for Juventus.
Yeah, there's no doubt. It's still hard to believe. It's kind of hard to believe, and
we're seeing the pictures coming out of their camp, and it just blows your mind.
It also gives me just a little bit of pleasure every time I think about it.
A lot. It's a lot of. It's preseason, so we're still in those days where everything's possible. McKennie could be starting on day one, which is where that sort of rush comes from. But then you also know it could turn into the opposite of that, and it could all come crashing down.
Even if he doesn't start day one, I mean that won't bring me down too much. Will it you? I mean,
no. The opposite of starting day one for me is McKennie gets 100 minutes over the course of the next 4 months.
Yeah. I mean, I haven't done a lot of like my own research on this, but I did listen to Total Soccer Show with David Amoyal, the Calcio Land podcast guy, and his basic take, and he's a guy who knows what he's talking about, was McKennie will get. It's fair to think that he'll get 60% of the minutes. He'll play like 60% of the minutes for Juventus. He'll be second choice. I saw there's another guy on YouTube, a Juventus fan account, that's really like a really charming little show. A guy named Giuseppe. I put it on the Patreon page. Who thinks McKennie's likely to play as a 6 behind Bentancur. And Amayal didn't think that. He thought he'd be more of a maybe a dual 8, to put it in Berhalter parlance. But yeah, I don't know. It seems like he's going to play, and it's a deal worth $21 million, 21 million euros, something like that. So
yeah, and for all intents and purposes, it is a purchase, because the roller coaster ride was Juventus getting him on loan for a year with an option to buy. And the original report was that trigger, there would be an automatic trigger for the option if McKennie played in 60% of Juventus's games, which, if you're skeptical of McKennie's ability to do that, which a lot of people I think are, then it feels like a bad situation for McKennie, and Juventus just sort of having a free tryout for a guy. Well, it turns out that the automatic trigger is Juventus qualifying for the Champions League, which is like, I don't know what the actual percentages are, but Juventus qualifies for Champions League. So barring like a complete disaster for Juventus, it's effectively a purchase. They bought him for 21 million, right?
Yeah, right. Well said. Well explained. Great.
And so if a team has bought somebody for 21 million, they're not buying him because they don't believe in him. They're not taking a flyer here. Not that $21 million players haven't busted. I mean, you have plenty of those as well, but this isn't like somebody just trying to cash in because there's a free opportunity on a guy. They're putting some skin in the game on McKennie.
Yeah, I think one thing we know about McKennie is that he's coachable, and that he is, he does well to ingratiate himself. That's not the right word. To endear himself to his coach. He's done that with multiple coaches at Schalke. Lots of turmoil at that club, but he was playing every game at the end of the Bundesliga season here, and he seems to just continually rise to the top, or at least near the top. So Juventus is a different ballgame. It's a different ballgame, of course.
Right, rises to the top of Schalke.
Schalke.
I don't think anyone in their wildest dreams are thinking that McKennie is going to do what Pulisic did at Chelsea, where he's going to suddenly become the most influential player on the team, arguably.
That wasn't even in my wildest dreams that Pulisic was going to do that.
So McKennie, given who Juventus already have on their roster, I don't think anyone's really holding out hope for that. I think it's very much, can he at least find a way to be a key contributor? It's kind of in the way Tyler Adams is for Leipzig. I'd say is what a lot of people are like hoping for.
Yeah.
If we got that, I would be thrilled.
Yeah,
like,
totally.
Rotational starter, guy comes off the bench pretty regularly. Give me that in a heartbeat.
Yep. And it seems to be the general consensus that he will be that. He's going to be one of 6 midfielders, likely, rotating in a 3-man midfield, a 4-3-3. He's going to get time. Juventus has they have the domestic cup to contend with, and they, like you said, they will be in Champions League. And they will likely qualify for Champions League for the following season, which will trigger the purchase clause. And he's a Juventus legend, Weston McKennie.
So Weston McKennie to Juventus for $21 million. That's the lead. That's the lead story.
It's such a big deal. I mean, it really is. And we're talking about it 10 days late or whatever. Everybody else has already weighed in on it. But man, what a cool thing for him, and good job by his agents, the Wasserman Group, because to go from being rumored to go to Southampton, and then the rumor was, well, Southampton didn't quite see him as a good fit, and then all of a sudden, blam, he's like landing in Turin.
Looking smart.
Yeah. Yep. All right, so I think another issue or another piece of news that I would think is close to your heart is Timmy Weah's return for Lille in Liga 1.
That was for me the biggest thing that happened over the weekend. I think the McKennie news had already come out, but it was a big weekend for U.S. players, for American talent. A lot of it went on in MLS on that Saturday, which we'll get into. And then Sunday morning, bright and early, Timmy Weah makes his return after multiple hamstring issues that have basically kept him out for a full year. He got hurt second or third game after the second game of the French season last year.
Right.
Came back in like February to play one game for them and did his hamstring again in 10 minutes. And 6 months later, he's back on the field, got 12 minutes, actually pretty involved for a 12-minute cameo.
Yeah.
And like for me, I'm not jumping to a ton of conclusions off of a 12-minute cameo, but he looked like what you remember Timmy Weah looking like. And for me, that's a very tidy, really clean player. And so I was just so happy to see him back.
Yeah, bright little cameo. Almost scored twice in a 1-0 win, a game that it appears Lille controlled. Yeah, he looked...
I couldn't tell you. I flipped it on when Weah came on. That's when I found the stream.
I watched the clips and I saw the stats. The stats
Okay.
were they outshot. Don't come at me for this, but Rams,
Sure.
something like that. I looked it up on YouTube. I still can't pronounce it. It's the capital of the Champagne region in France, right?
As we all know.
So they outshot him 10-4, and they looked like they were bearing down in those last 15 minutes when Weah was on the field. But yeah, like you said, looked explosive. Didn't look any worse for the wear after his injuries.
It should be pointed out, came in as a full-out number 9.
Yeah.
That is a very cool thing to see happen.
Intéressant. Interesting. Yeah. Probably we'll get into that question later. Okay. Anything else on Weah? I mean, that's also really big news. On a normal week, that would be the big news of the week.
Yeah, just because for me, Timmy Weah is the one sort of what I'd say still speculative U.S. men's national team player that I am kind of all in on. I know we are people think that Scuffed is always hyping like the youth guys and like overhyping them to an extent. And I'm not particularly like all in on any of these youth guys. That we talk about them a lot, but I'm definitely not all in on a single one of them. I think overall the pool is strong enough at that young ages that enough of them are going to come good, but I'm not like Uliana is for sure going to be a key player in this World Cup qualifying cycle. But Tim Weah is like the unproven guy that I do feel like we've seen enough of Tim Weah that I'm like, yes, Tim Weah will be, if not a starter, like our best player on the bench for World Cup qualifying through the 2022 cycle.
I don't know if I 100% agree, but yeah, I hear you. You are heard.
You don't agree that I'm all in on Tim Weah? You're disputing that I'm all in?
No, I'm not disputing that. I'm just not sure. Like, is he definitely going to be a key player off the bench in World Cup qualifying? Yeah, probably. Yeah, probably.
If he's not, it's because he's starting in World Cup qualifying.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. I would say, just to get a little self-referential here, I'm the one who's guilty of hyping young prospects, but I'm trying to change my ways. I'm walking that back and not doing it as much.
I hype that they should play, that they should get called and should play. We should test them. I don't think for a second that they're all going to pan out and lead us to World Cup glory. I think that a lot of them have very realistic chances of already being top 35 to 40 caliber players, which is the pool you need for a 23-man roster.
Yeah, the pool, man. The pool is in a resurgent phase. It feels. But before we get to that, Reggie Cannon, he's apparently heading to Boa Vista.
It's not official, right? But he's moving. Like, for sure, he's moving. He's sort of done playing FC Dallas. But it hasn't been announced where he's signing. It's strongly rumored that it's Boa Vista in the Portuguese first division.
Same owners as Lille.
Owners as Lille. But I'm very curious if we hear sort of Lille mentioned in the announcement, whether it's some kind of like an arrangement between Lille and Boa Vista, or if it's just I wouldn't say a coincidence, but just like I don't know, how would you put it? Just an interesting factoid about Boa Vista is that they're also owned by Lille.
I don't know. Is there a pipeline from Boa Vista to Lille where they players spend a couple seasons in Portugal and then make it to Lille? I actually don't know the answer to that.
I don't either. I really want to find out, but I believe this guy is just sort of quickly becoming the owners of these teams. He doesn't have this isn't like Red Bull where they've been doing this for almost 10 years now. I think he's literally like just bought Boa Vista in the last 2 weeks, or it might not even be done.
Really?
Like, it might not
is that recent?
I'm pretty sure. And this is based on me, like, as we heard rumors of Boa Vista, like Wikipedia-ing Boa Vista and finding out who their owners are. And I think it's a very recent thing that's sort of going on.
I think the upshot for me is it's good for Cannon to get over to the other side of the ocean. Like, even if it's a mid-table Portuguese side,
right? A platform at the very least, to hire European football, and also the test of is he even good enough for the Portuguese First League? We don't know. I think he is. I think he'll slot in, and again, sometimes these things don't happen immediately or come into the team late. They've already been in training for preseason. I think their league starts on the 20th of September. So don't panic if he's not starting the first week or the first 2 weeks. If we get into November, December, and he hasn't played yet, then you could start to wonder if maybe this isn't the right fit, or if we've maybe overvalued Reggie Cannon.
Okay, let's talk about MLS. There was a bonanza of youth minutes played over the weekend and impact made by these young players basically across the league. It's officially hard to keep track of everybody.
It's impossible. And yeah, it was like a whole season's worth of players and impact. I think Sharetta listed it as 47 U.S. youth national team eligible players in action.
That includes the U23s, right? The Olympic eligible kids. Yeah.
So players born, I believe, 1997. That's right. Is that Jackson Ewell?
97 and later.
Birth year. 47 guys playing. So pretty solid little Saturday. That was just Saturday.
And to be clear, I don't know that any of these guys is gonna be. Ewell's already kind of a key national team player, somewhat controversially. But I don't know that anybody here is like gonna be a U.S. men's national team legend. A couple of them might, but there's nobody who you're like definitely he's got that special quality. So it's just a broadening and deepening of the pool, which it goes back to the whole Greg Velasquez lottery tickets analogy.
Right. So we're assuming now, given the success of our top tier youth players, that we now have like what 5-6 guys with Champions League experience who are 21 or younger. The jackpot has gotten much bigger, and we're buying a lot more tickets. So I think out of those 47, obviously Reggie Cannon not even included in that because he didn't play. Paxton Pomacall didn't play because he's hurt.
Mark McKenzie didn't play.
McKenzie was rotated to rest. So 3 of what we would consider sort of higher end prospects didn't even appear. So it was really Ewell was sort of the headliner. We had, when I say headliner, I mean from a U.S. men's national team.
Sort of being an established player. Yeah.
Miles Robinson, Brendan Aronson, a couple of those other guys with call-ups, but it's just the base has gotten so much bigger, and again, we're all hoping that that's an indication that we've at least improved dramatically our ability to develop players who can play at a reasonably high level.
Yeah.
So we go through some of the highlights of that group of 47. Can you name all 47 of them? Can we do a Yakko Warner 47 players of the world?
I can't guarantee comprehensive-ness here, but yeah, some highlights. So 16-year-old Cade Cowell at San Jose. He's a winger / attacker, just a very physically gifted young man. Scored a goal with a 21-yard rope cutting in on his right foot, and enjoying some space gifted him by Rolf Feltscher, he who stands between Julian Araujo and starting fullback minutes at LA Galaxy. It was a 3-2 win for the Galaxy. Great goal for Cowell in his first league start. He's obviously, gifted physically, like I said. We'll see how his game develops over the next 3 or 4 years. There's nothing there. I'm not like dropping everything and saying Cade Cowell's a amazing prospect, but he's right. But he's, it was a nice goal. Also in that game, Julian Araujo demonstrated that he is steadily improving, in my opinion. The 19-year-old created a little danger in the attacking third. You can check out Joaquin's video. Joaquin's done videos on basically all of these names. An amazing weekend for him, too.
His output was basically unprecedented for that weekend.
Yeah. He's really doing a lot of like Scott Joplin soundtracks these days, too. So Araujo was played out of his natural position as a winger, which has been a source of some frustration, I think. And then around the 62nd minute, LA is down 2-1 to San Jose, thanks in part to this Cowell goal. And GBS brings Feltscher off, puts Efra Alvarez on at right wing, and Araujo moves into the back line. And he looked even more comfortable there in the final hour, and LA came back from 2-1 down to win the game. Araujo's rangy and physical and a dogged, if occasionally reckless, defender. And he had 2 assists a week ago in that 2-0 win over LAFC. Another decent attacking showing over the weekend. I think he's on a good trajectory for a fullback. And he is on Berhalter's radar. He was in January camp. So some people will be frustrated by this, but I do want to mention Alvarez, Efra, the 18-year-old Mexican youth international from Los Angeles, from the 3-4-3 Gary Kleiben, Brian Kleiben ecosystem. Like I said, came on for Feltscher, played the right wing, and he's not going to play for the U.S. one day, most likely, and that's sad, but he is fun as hell to watch. And we know if he keeps playing like he did on Sunday, he had an assist and a fizzed-in cross that drew a handball and was generally bright on the ball. He's going to stay on the field for LA, and if he stays on the field, we're going to start seeing like highlight reel goals because that's how he does.
He looks like a clever player. He had the dummy too, didn't he?
Yeah, it didn't quite find the feet of one of his teammates, but that's the kind of thing that makes me very happy to see.
So yeah, I'm excited. I hope he keeps getting minutes. It's not like certainly the U.S. has not closed the door on him. I know, Berhalter mentioned him specifically way back when one of his earliest camps as U.S. coach had mentioned that he'd gone and spoken with him. So there at least had been some lines of communication. Again, I don't have like this panic of like, will he choose us? Will he go somewhere else? It's always just a matter of like keep the communication open. If it works out, great. If it works out and he can contribute, again, we're talking a pretty small subset of players. Wonderful.
Yeah.
In the meantime, I'm enjoying seeing him get some run out for LA.
Yeah, it's good to see a young player, even one committed to Mexico, get minutes at the Galaxy, along with Araujo. So, 17-year-old Ricardo Pepi got an assist, put in a decent shift on the wing for FC Dallas in a 3-1 win over Minnesota. Pepi is also Pepi's leaving his options open on who he's going to play for in the long term. Could represent Mexico, could represent the U.S. He's been in the U.S. system. He played on the wing for Dallas, not his natural position, but played pretty well, I thought.
Buzio.
Yeah.
Give us the Buzio scoop.
Yeah, so I watched quite a bit of his performance over the weekend. He's now a deep-lying regista for Sporting Kansas City. And it wasn't my idea. I never had the idea, but I do like the idea.
I'm going to say right now that Peter Vermes heard you talking about playing Alex Mendez as a deep lying midfielder, and he was like, "We could do that with Buzio."
Certainly, that's probably what happened.
Prove me wrong.
I never thought of it with Buzio, but it seems to be working, and it does make sense. He was always a bit of an attacker without a clear role. He was not a winger. He's obviously not a 9. Doesn't have the frame for that. As a 10, I thought he was generally uninspiring for club and for country as a youth international.
I'll say I am surprised by how effective he's been in this role, because sort of the knock on him was that he is not a very incisive passer. He was like, that was sort of the bit, was that he's going to pass it sideways or backwards. He doesn't complete forward passes. Now, I know when you put him a layer, another level back in the formation,
bingo,
there are more options to play forward. But I certainly wasn't like, that's all he needs, is he just needs to be farther back so that he can hit all these great passes that he sees. Like, that hadn't been what I would have expected. It's one of those things, he'd been linked to big clubs all throughout MLS's back at high dollar amounts. There were reports last year that Kansas City had turned down like a $4 million bid for him, which sort of everyone just found ridiculous that such a bid would have been offered. And that one would have been turned down.
Yeah, still find it ridiculous. Yeah,
that's what I'm saying. So he has looked better. He still doesn't look like someone necessarily right now who should be getting like $4 million bids. But I mean, if he can do this job and really start to take games over and be a guy who can control the game from that deep, then I guess we start talking.
Yeah. Yeah, at least you can see a plausible trajectory for him to be like a meaningful professional soccer player. And I'm not sure I could see that 6 months ago. And an interesting thing about this role for him is he's arriving in zone 14 and shooting the ball. Like, I think he took 5 shots over the weekend, including he scored a goal. He can hit it, man. He can hit like a dipping, swerving 25-yard shot. And so he's getting a little more joy in that way from this role too. The only thing is he's still too easy to dribble past, like for a 6, or really for any position on the field in this day and age. You gotta make it harder to get around you. So if he can develop into a average or plus defender, I think he has a good future as a deep lying midfielder. It seems.
And we've seen that happen too, even with a guy like Paxton Pomykal, where there can be that jump from 18 to 19, 19 to 20, where that's sort of added into your game. And let's hope that Buzio does that, so he can be a sort of a complete player and not, I know we throw this around a little bit, but like a luxury player where he has to be so good, and a Will Trapp type player where he is so good at spreading the field and breaking those lines that you can afford that defensive liability.
You're never gonna let that go, are you? The Will Trapp era.
I don't even know if the Will Trapp era has ended.
Yeah, I guess we don't. So Buzio's stock gone up since mid-August, I would say. 3 games in the Andrea Pirlo role, and sky's the limit.
Who else?
19-year-old Cole Bassett roofed one from close range for Colorado in that game. Almost missed it, but put it in. That game ended 1-1. Jalen Lindsey, the 19-year-old fullback who was hurt all last year with a knee injury, he's been playing regularly for Sporting KC at left back. Probably see him tonight. There's a whole slate of games tonight. Yeah. DC United.
The DC kids. Tell us what the DC kids were doing.
Neither scored or assisted, but 17-year-old Kevin Paredes was positive at what appeared to be left wing back. He's been playing mostly winger in his career. He was mostly positive. DC did lose 4-0 or 4-1 to Philadelphia.
And these kids were very much forced into the game, right? Through DC going through like a pretty significant injury crisis.
That could be. I haven't followed it super closely. I mean, Paredes has gotten minutes. He was getting minutes even in MLS's back.
Yeah, Paredes has been sort of starting regularly, but Nyman had not been.
Yeah, and that's the other one, 16-year-old Moses Nyman, a player I think has quite a lot of potential. Came on the field and looked pretty good for the last 15 minutes or so, and that was his MLS debut. I was going to say, let's see if he can keep getting chances and show his stuff. And then we find out Felipe did his ACL, found that news out this morning. So one would assume Nyman will continue to get chances.
Who picked Nyman up in your futures draft? Who's got him?
I got him in the most recent futures draft. I mean, let's not bring up that sore subject.
All right, let's talk about more of the kids. You got like a quick rundown, like a
So I'm not gonna
around to the kids.
I'm not gonna give a paragraph on everybody now. It's just 19-year-old Jesus Ferreira scored a goal for FC Dallas. That was assisted by Pepe. 19-year-old Brendan Aronson scored for Philly a couple days earlier. 20-year-old striker Daryl Dike, spelled Dike, at Orlando City got an MLS assist on a lovely sequence. And he's been drawing some attention with his performances because he's like 6'4", 220. He's huge. He's got a great frame for a classic number 9.
He's got an absolute cannon of a shot.
Yeah.
And he hammers a soccer ball.
Yeah. I actually didn't know that.
Oh yeah, that had been like his any highlight you saw of him from Wake Forest, is that where he was playing?
Yeah.
He just
Virginia.
Okay, just like rips the ball through human beings, and he had another one of those in his last MLS game where he didn't score on it, but he just smashed. He might have scored the rebound.
He did score the rebound.
Smashed it, and you can just tell the goalkeeper's hands have melted off of his. So he's been fun to watch,
and I think. We know some people who are really, really excited about him. I think he is definitely worth paying attention to from a national team perspective because the number 9 situation remains somewhat unresolved.
And we've got this whole year delay in the Olympics where some of these guys, I don't know if you even want to call them late bloomers. He's 20. He's a striker. There aren't a ton of 20-year-old strikers dominating at the highest levels. He gets another year to see if he can be an Olympic qualifying guy. Maybe he could go to Tokyo.
Yeah, great. Omir Fernandez at New York Red Bulls, 21-year-old attacker, scored a lovely goal and played quite well, I thought.
Yeah, had a great game.
In a 1-1 draw with New England. He kind of reminds me a little bit of Gallegos at San Antonio, but with more polish, a little more polish, a little more playing against obviously a higher level of competition. Mauricio Pineda, center back / defensive midfielder for Chicago, scored. Hassani Dotson hit a banger for Minnesota. Brooks Lennon scored on a header in a losing effort for Atlanta. Keenan Park scored. Jeremy Bobasé got an assist. So there's more to get into, but you just have to do your own research, people.
Seriously, check out Shredda's list of 47 people. You pull it's an impressive development.
Yeah, is this sort of like, you see this as the consummation of everything we've been talking about at the Scuff podcast Saturday?
I think so. Like, it surely is, right? Like, we've been saying, like, this is going to be the way in for clubs, especially in MLS because of some of the mechanisms of salary caps. You get these guys that you develop yourself, and you're paying them like peanuts. Like, these guys are on. Yeah, and even as they get higher, it doesn't hit your cap the same way it would if you were to bring in a player from from the outside. So you're going to find teams that realize that this is a competitive advantage, whether it's overall or certainly within this MLS league structure. So this you're definitely seeing it play out that way.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, none of these guys, like I said earlier, is likely to be an Alphonso Davies style transfer to a mega club.
Some people are going to say that you're wrong, and Brendan Harrison will be a Alphonso Davies style best player in Europe.
Who's saying that?
I don't know. There are some people really, really high on Aronson in particular.
Yeah, that's true. I he's a nice player, but I'm not there with them on that. I think he's. Yeah, we'll see.
All right. Hey, and the other thing, it wasn't just the kids either. Like Sebastian Lletget was delivering. Like, so Jordan Morris obviously has kept up his ridiculous form in the league.
2 goals.
And then even like Mueller and Baird, like the two guys we always kind of, I don't want to say use them as punchlines or punching bags, but when we're talking about how weak our depth is on the wings or how weak it had been, and we sort of start to bring those guys up as examples of how weak we are there when they're very much in the picture, they're starting to say, hey, like maybe we're not so bad to have in the picture.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, Baird had that really lovely slaloming run through the 18, and then he passed it off to, I forget the name of that striker. Is it Sam something? Sam Johnson?
Yeah, that sounds right.
Okay. Let's get to some Patreon questions. Thank you to everyone who supports the podcast on Patreon. This is really helpful to us, to me in particular. If you don't and listen regularly to the podcast, please consider doing so.
For real, Bells does so much heavy lifting that I don't think you'd be able to do it without getting a little bit of support like this.
Yeah, thanks, Greg. I'll have more news on that front on my personal life eventually, but for now, let's do some questions. Steve Copera, I hope I pronounced that correctly, says, if the best U.S. U20 players had an internal scrimmage, who would a neutral observer say is the best player, ignoring club affiliation and hype?
You going or you want me to go?
I want you to go.
It's Gio Reyna. It's going to be Gio Reyna. I'll hear you out, Bells, but Gio Reyna. Go.
Yeah, I mean, to be interesting, I'll say Jose Gallegos, but I wasn't even thinking of Reyna as a US U20 player. He is though. Okay. He is. He totally is. So I just missed that. Yeah, I think probably Reyna's going to look the best. It's like, would Reyna look the best if he was surrounded by players like DiRenzo and Solinac, the attackers that Gallegos surrounds himself with in San Antonio? Or does it help him a little bit to have Jadon Sancho on one side and?
No, I slightly put Gallegos, and I thought maybe it was just going to be because, Reyna's, I think, pretty clearly the better player right now. But if you're playing against other U20s, that might be where Gallegos, because of his aesthetic, like the way he does people up, is just so like eye catching. Whereas Gio Reyna is very just like sturdy, collect it here, like. Shift your body so that this guy can't get it, and then do the next thing. It's not as like, it doesn't pop the same way.
Yeah.
Even though obviously he can do it and continue to do it, even as he's playing Bundesliga and Champions League players.
Certainly, the safe bet is that Reyna will look better. He does in fact play for one of the biggest clubs in the world, and appears to be in line for a serious role this year. Christopher Smith asks, should USMNT fans start investing in the idea of Reyna as one of the dual eights?
You go first this time.
Yes. It's not guaranteed to happen, but I think I'd go long on that financial position. Weah, Morris, Sargent, Zardes, and Altidore, and probably others are going to be competing for 2 positions right now, given that Pulisic is going to be at left wing almost certainly. And Pamukkal's out for the season, so there's no competition from him for one of the dual 8 roles. Aronson is, for me, not as convincing. Ledesma has a long road ahead. Oh, who else is in that mix? Christian Roldan.
Well, I think the question is going to be, is he going to be the dual 8 or is he going to be a winger?
Yeah.
So are you saying that you're going to sort of bet on him being the dual 8 in the long term? long term he's the dual 8?
Yeah, well, I guess we have to factor in Berhalter's commitment to the deep lying 6, because that would probably keep Reyna on the wing. But is Berhalter so committed to it? I feel like we're having the same conversation every 2 months. Is Berhalter so committed to that deep lying 6 that he has to play Jackson Ewell or Michael Bradley there, which then has this domino effect of forcing Timmy Weah off the field or Jordan Morris off the field, or I don't know. Because you got to assume Adams and McKennie are going to be playing in the midfield if they're both healthy.
Right.
So if you got Ewell at the 6 and you got Adams and McKennie at the 8, Reyna's got to play on the wing. He's probably coming in off the bench for Morris or Weah.
No.
Who knows?
No. But no, I would say yes. I think long term, Reyna does move into that dual 8 role, and we start to abandon that deep lying 6. And sort of the only way I see that not happening is if Timmy Weah is like tested out up top and just plays all of our other options off the park there, and so he becomes sort of that combining number 9 who can also make dangerous runs into the box, because I think that's sort of what we're missing, is we don't have the complete picture right now. We have Zardes, who can make the good runs in the box, but he can't really combine in the build-up. We've got Ferreira, who does really well combining in the build-up, but we haven't necessarily seen him have that killer instinct in the box. Josie can do most of all of that, but he's never healthy. So if Weah can be that player who can do both of those things at a high level, then it's like, okay, Weah goes here, we start Reyna on the wing, and we find a way to rotate Morris and Reyna and Pulisic in these congested qualifying windows.
Yeah. Okay.
That's how I say Reyna doesn't become a dual 8. Otherwise, I think eventually he does move into more of like, we're calling it a dual 8. He'd become probably more of a number 10, more of a dedicated number 10 type.
Yeah.
How's that?
I like it. I mean, I feel like there's no really terrible options here, which is nice. Good question, Christopher Smith. Thank you. Looking for left backs asks, if Gio Reyna is a must-start player after 343 Bundesliga minutes, what happens if Nick Taitagwe becomes a consistent starter with Schalke? If all of Adams, McKennie, Reyna, Taitagwe, Ledesma, and Mendes are healthy and starting this season, how do you see our midfield lining up?
Can I just start in and say, yes, Reyna's only played 343 minutes in the Bundesliga, but they're 343 minutes for Borussia Dortmund, and that is a completely different picture than any number of minutes Taitagwe can get for Schalke. No matter how many minutes he plays for Schalke, given where Schalke is right now and what they've literally stated their ambitions are, it doesn't compare. Reyna doesn't have to change his role at all. He could continue to be first guy off the bench all season. The top teams in the top 5 leagues basically are in a different league. Like they compose their own league, and I mean, there's talk of them actually, breaking away, forming that super league. But essentially, that already exists. That distinction already exists, even if it isn't formalized in a separate league. So no, there's nothing Taitagwe can do that will trump the minutes that Reyna's getting at Dortmund. Just wanted to start.
Yeah, no, I think that's true. Schalke and Dortmund are rivals. They have one of the great rivalries in global football, but they are not in the same category right now, especially right now. Schalke is really struggling. And you think about who Reyna's competing with for minutes. I mean, people like Thorgan Hazard, Jadon Sancho, who else? Marco Reus is always hurt, so he's not really competing with him. But
he was their first guy off the bench from January on. He was their first guy off in meaningful games. They were still in contention for the league, still in Champions League.
Yeah.
And he was coming in ahead of anybody else. So it wasn't just like, let's get his feet wet. Like, it was like, okay, it might have served dual purposes to develop him, but it was also very much like, we are trying to get after this, and Gio Reyna's the guy we think will do it for us today. So again, he's just, right now, they're just in different stratospheres.
Yeah. And I would say to the second part of the question, I don't see Ledesma and Mendes starting consistently for their first teams this fall. It certainly doesn't look like that's going to happen right now. So I don't know. And then Taitagwe would have to be really a revelation for Schalke to sort of break past Adams, McKennie, Reyna. So I think it's kind of set for now, and I do rate Ledesma highly, in case you're a first-time listener to this podcast. And I love the way I love some things about Mendez's game too. So I'm totally rooting for them. I wouldn't be totally shocked if one of them emerges later this fall. I just don't think it's super likely right now. Next question. John Heath asks, big if, he stays healthy, do you think Aaron Johansson could re-enter the national team picture? Greg?
Well, I never really slammed the door closed on anybody, especially in an area of, if not weakness, at least unprovenness. And if a guy like Jazzy Zardes, God bless him, is still sort of very much in the picture as being your number one striker, then I think I can comfortably say that striker is an area of some weakness. But realistically, no, I don't think Johansson's going to get back in the picture. He's scoring goals, but I think, he's their penalty taker, so he's going to have inflated stats in that sense. The league is not a great league. So he's really going to need to, he'd really have to show it in a camp. He'd need to get into a camp in when we're shorthanded, in November when we can only call the Euros. He is, though, I've been watching him. He still is a really tidy player, just really good decisions, really clean as the ball comes into him. It's hard to know how much he benefits from Sweden being the Swedish league and those windows being easy to play through, how easy it is to create separation for himself to get into those positions. But if we were looking for sort of that Jesus Ferreira mold of a player, Jesus Ferreira versus Costa Rica, that's what Johansson would be. He'd definitely be that really clean forward who could play it into his feet, and he can very much put it into his teammates' path in rhythm on his first touch.
Yeah. I remember, he had that 3-game window for Werder Bremen a couple winters ago. I don't know, feels like 100 years ago now, where he scored or assisted 3 or 4 games in a row. He just, something about the game comes easily to him.
Yes, yep, he really has a sense of the moving pieces. And he has the technical chops to pull some of that stuff off.
Mm-hmm. I still don't see a spot for him at his age with his injury history. He's about to turn 30. Now, I know he's not, that doesn't make him grandpa, but he's getting up in years. His injury history is well documented. Scott Jorick, great friend of the pod. He who fact checks us, and will probably fact check this. When facing a Tata, this is his question. When facing a Tata, that'd be Tata Martino, the coach of the Mexican national team, I feel like there's a better chance for Berhalter to be outcoached than make adjustments that give the team an advantage. When do we focus on this being the limiting factor? I'll start. I think this is a real issue, and Berhalter has to prove himself. He is still on a campaign to sort of apologize, not apologize, but apologism. That doesn't sound right.
Nope, leaving it in. Go.
Yeah, he's been trying to justify what happened in that 3-0 loss to Mexico in a friendly by saying, well, we were basically just doing a training ground exercise and playing out of the back. And I think that still kind of rubs me the wrong way that he talks about it that way when it comes up, because we got absolutely smoked. And I didn't like that.
I'll chime in and say it rubs me the wrong way too, and it's not because I hate that it shifts the conversation to should the U.S. ever should you use games to do that, or should you always try to win? And I've said before, that's a total smokescreen, because even if you're willing to concede that we can use these games as experiments, he should be very much open to criticism for how he conducts the experiments and what he's trying to do in them. Then I think there's a lot of room to criticize those decisions as well. So even if it's okay to experiment, it was just a terribly set up and run experiment. Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think the short answer is it is an issue. He will have a better team every month than the month before. It does appear, unless we have some catastrophic injuries There's so much American talent in the pipeline, but he's got to prove that he can coach at this level.
Yeah, his best defense at the moment would be the tactical differences between Canada Part 1 and Canada Part 2 from last fall. Which for me, I'm not going to give him a big gold star just yet because that was an in-between game tactical shift, not an in-game tactical shift. And I think we need to be able to see him do those things in-game before I really say, yes, he's capable of this at this level with the restrictions that the national team comes with. And then the other part is the bar was set so low. He set the bar so low in Canada Part 1. I mean, there were justifiable, in my mind, justifiable calls for his job. I know Ernie specifically said going into Part 2 that he wasn't coaching for his job, but I think he absolutely should have been. That it would have been like insane, or it would have been really shocking if there hadn't been pretty substantial improvement between games 1 and game 2.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see. Of course, it'll be interesting to see how he handles these friendlies coming up, and whatever happens in the spring. Be nice to see the national team back on the field again. Michael Jordan. I'm assuming this is not Wilmington native Michael Jordan.
Brooklyn native. I think.
What is needed more, Weah at striker or Gio as the 10? Feels like either could play on the wing, but our depth at right wing, Yanez, Conrad, Morris, Areola, could be strong enough to shift either or both of them. What is needed more? Like
those guys to hit, I assume, like to hit big.
Yeah, or go ahead.
I'll just focus on that right wing depth, how it could be strong enough. Like that's a huge could be for me. Like again, I've said this before. As high as I am on the general direction of our youth and what they can bring, Yanez and Conrad both could essentially end up offering sort of nothing at the international level. And Areola is, I would say, capable, but he's already, in my mind, a very low, threshold to clear. And even Morris, I continue to say Morris is still unproven, despite the fact that he's tearing it up for Seattle, and despite the fact that he, knocked in a bunch of goals in a 2019 where we played a pretty weak opposition schedule. So we don't know for sure that our right wing is going to just be set for the future without using Weah or Gio there.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess I don't. I think Weah at striker would probably, if Weah hits as a striker, that's a bigger benefit to the national team than Gio at the 10. I think Gio could play in several different positions. We do need a good striker. We're still not there. So I guess that's my answer to that question. Sorry, I was looking at my phone. Some stuff's going on.
No worries, man.
Curtis,
I'll just jump into Weah at the 10. If Weah could play striker again at that level we talked about, that would just be massive, regardless of where anyone else hits. Because, for what I think Weah can offer, if he brings that level of what I'm expecting to the striker position, that will be very much reason to celebrate.
Yeah. I guess it does depend on how good of a season Sargent has. My hope springs eternal for me that he will have a breakout. He's still not an old man. He's very young. So if he can become sort of a ruthless, efficient number 9, then that changes the conversation.
Sebastian Soto debut coming up this weekend.
Yeah,
it's an international break for almost everyone else, but Telstar FC are playing.
Okay. All right, mark your calendars. You'll have the play bill out, I assume, this week.
No, I won't, because I just gave it. It's Sebastian Soto.
Okay.
Everyone else is off for the break.
Oh, okay. I should listen better when I'm looking you in the eyes. Curtis Fowers, who are the upcoming dual nationals that have a reasonable shot at representing the U.S. men's national team? Anyone to get super excited about?
Anthony Robinson?
Yeah, I mean, so many dual nationals, but I guess like people that I'm excited about, Jonathan Gomez at Louisville City and Kobe Hernandez Foster, they just sort of fit that left back profile we're looking for. They probably a ways out from any involvement with the national team.
I still think Sivachu and who's the English kid playing for Arsenal?
Oh
Balogun?
yeah, Fuller and Balogun. Yeah.
Those two are some that, if for some reason they were to decide to jump, like you could see Balogun still playing, Arsenal U23s, I think. But again, sort of like adjacent to being able to step in very quickly into our senior team if they get a look.
Yeah. So three more questions. Let's do them really quickly.
Got it.
Blisios asks, the more I watch James Sands, the more I feel like 3G has to figure out a way to use him. What is his best position in how we currently play? To me, scrapping the deep six playmaker and just bully teams off the field with an Adams, McKennie, Sands midfield makes a lot of sense. It would create a ton of transition goals. I'll say I've had the same thought about Sands. Not that we have to do it. I'm just like playing with it in my mind. I don't think Berhalter's going to do that, though. I don't think, and I think Sands doesn't offer enough on the ball yet to be one of those dual eights.
And if you set him as a 6, so this is where I get into like a lot of guys can sound like they should play if you're holding him up against Jackson Ewell as the bar to get in. But if you're getting rid of that deep lying playmaker role and you're not asking for your deep center mid to be a distributor, then I feel like suddenly you're not competing against Jackson. I mean, you're competing against Tyler Adams because that's the guy who would probably naturally filter into there.
Yeah.
And so you essentially bring in a bunch more competition for James Sands if he's not just competing against Jackson Ewell.
Right. Yeah, good point. So it's a tough road for him unless he becomes that, regista, which doesn't appear like that's going to be what he is as a soccer player. Austin asks, I will say I do love that idea of the buzzsaw midfield in the abstract.
Oh, I do too. I just think it could easily end up being Pomacall as that third midfielder, or Dwayne Holmes, or even like Sebastian Lletget as the most attacking of the three.
Yeah, or Gio Reyna.
Buzzsaw midfielders. There you go.
Austin asks, what U.S. men's national team or U.S. youth national team players do you think will end up moving this window? He lists McKenzie, Aronson, Dest, Richards on loan. I'd say McKenzie seems like the most likely to move. Richards probably needs a loan the most. But you put a squirt gun to my head, I'm going to say none of them will move this window.
All right. I think, that wouldn't surprise me at all. Like, I know Dest has been linked with every power club on the continent, but I'm not going to be shocked if they all end up staying home for another window.
Mark Helmer asks, why is having a low box cross percent good? That is always one of Pulisic's best stats in his stats bomb radars. Well, I needed some help on this one, but I think I do have an answer thanks to Matt Hartman. It sounds like box cross percent is the percentage of passes into the box that are crosses. So a pass to feet is better. Therefore, a low box cross percent is better than a high box cross percent.
There you go.
Got that?
I'm glad that exists because I hate crosses. So I'm very glad that people are valuing the ability to hit passes into the box that are not crosses.
Yeah.
Crosses always felt like a surrender to me.
Don't
seems surrender the ball.
Yeah.
Soccer your way through it with another pass.
It seems like a useful stat. Now, something I didn't know at 8:00 this morning.
It's why Pulisic went for $70 million. Chelsea looked at his box cross percent, said that's pretty low. $70 million.
Classic box cross percent situation. Okay. There was one more question which I didn't get in the document, which was like, why do we have so much talent now? And I think we sort of talked about it.
It was just asking me and you why you and I have the amount of talent that
why do you have so much talent?
We have.
Now, we, as in the U.S. men's national team, why we have a bunch of these players hitting, and I think it goes back to the DA, right? It's a bunch of situations where players can have a professional
training environment.
Yeah, exactly.
You get a professional upbringing, and miraculously, we've developed a lot more professional players. time will still tell just how high like these ceilings are, whether or not the mega hits are already going to hit. That'd be Pulisic and Reyna, McKennie and Adams, or if we can sort of churn out 2 or 3 of those guys per U20 cycle.
Okay. Sounds good. Thanks everybody for listening. Thanks, Greg. See ya.